Okay, gang, in this lecture, we're going to be going over the various types of visual effects we're going to be covering in this course. Now, pay special close attention to these types here because you're going to be expected to implement all 5 of these visual effects types within your final project. Now, your final project is going to be a thematic story world that you're going to create in UE4, a very small world, a very small scene, maybe a 20 by 20 room, nothing really too major. And you're going to make sure to have all 5 of these visual effects techniques represented within them. So not only do you have to have 5 visual effects inside of that, but they've got to complement your story world. So that means they've got to contribute to the storytelling process. So the types of visual effect that we're going to be dealing with over this entire semester are, boom, 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 we're going to be dealing with lighting, we're going to be dealing with in-camera effects, we're going to be dealing with immaterial effects, we're going to be dealing with simulations, and we're going to be dealing with procedural animations slash particles. Okay. Okay, I don't have a slide here for lighting because you guys already know what lighting is. You guys have been probably gone through your capstone, at least as far as um, your game degree is concerned. So lighting has the most dramatic impact upon mood, upon setting, and upon emotion than any other type of effect that there is. So lighting is one of the strongest visual effects type because it reaches down and it helps manipulate and tell the story of the game within a subliminal, profound perspective. So lights is the probably the most important type of visual effect, but it's one that everyone tends to forget. All right, let's talk about some of these other ones. Now, in-camera visual effects are performed entirely inside of the game engine. And that means that the visual effects artist didn't need to create any kind of additional geometry. They just needed to know how to manipulate the post-process manipulators. Now, post-processes are one type of in-camera visual effect, but they are not the only one. Now, the other type of material that the other type of effect that we're going to be dealing with is immaterial effects, and that is done entirely inside of the material itself. Now, this is a huge area. In fact, this is probably the most largest and the most profound of all of the topic areas of visual effect that we're going to deal with, because this is the most sophisticated and the most complicated. Now, this goes into manipulate how the object is rendered. So you're going to be playing with the material. So this entire visual effect, what you see here, is all done in the material. This object is not actually moving and it's not actually animated, but its material is. Likewise, here's a material that is animated and moving. And here's something that you may have seen, but the all the objects inside of this thing, it looks like they're moving, but technically they're not. They're only moving within the context of the material itself. Everything else is really just staying static. All right, simulations is where you're going to use the computer in real time in order to duplicate physics. And so in this little video example, we see a little bit of a physics simulation going there. Now, this is a complicated simulation, and I don't know how interesting the game would be with a bunch of floating blocks and a floating bunnies going around and a bunch of water, but maybe this you could make a game out of this. I'm not quite sure. But there are a whole bunch of approximations and a bunch of strategies that you need to adopt in order to get physics to be replicated within the context of the game, and it's not particularly easy. One of the more easier things to do is simple cloth animation. So that can be done in real time, and that's very easy. And depending if we have time or not, then we got to get a chance to maybe play with chaos and maybe come up with some object destructions. Destructions can be done with a lot of different ways. You could be done using real-time simulations, or the simulations can be baked out ahead of time and then played forward into the game to make it look like it is dynamic. So those are a lot of fun. And the last type of visual effect that we're going to be dealing with are particles. Now, particles are procedural animations of tiny little elements. Now, examples of that, now here's what we are going after. These are sprite animations. Now, these are little hand-drawn animation dealios, and what you're seeing here is not actually any kind of movement going around. What you're seeing are flip books being performed inside sprites. And while you as an artist might actually hand animate all of the content for these flip books, the particle itself is not animated. The particles, what we have here, it looks like we have about 16 particles, and they are 16 little kind of rectangular sprites, and they're all pretty much sitting right there on the frame. Now here is an example of lots and lots of particles bursting forward. Now the particles can be used to create explosions. The most common, they're used for magic, and they are used to simulate certain things like water and sand and other moving objects. And so procedural animation does find its way into a lot of different games, and it has some really cool elements. Now here's where they're using. Now here's again, they're using particles in a sprite-wise in a similar situation, but here you have is a whole bunch of layers, and they're all transparent. And instead of just sitting around or just playing a flip book, what they're doing is they're actually animating. They're actually rotating. So the sprites are actually rotating. So what we're looking at is a bunch of rectangles with texture maps of rings and swipes and swoops painted on them, and then the speed of the rotation of those little planes are being animated. And this is where the joints are put inside of the character's arms, and actually a joint is put along their swords, and wherever the sword or wherever the dismiss this. Yeah, go. Ah, I don't know why it waited to this to go here. Anyway, we've got this going here. So anyway, these joints here are creating bits of particle geometry, and these geometry and is represented as these like wide lines and these like blades-like stripes, and they're all being animated in an outward direction. So the emitter is actually the joints themselves. All right, those are a quick rundown of the 5 visual effects techniques that we will be going over this semester. We've got a lot to cover, and there's a lot of different techniques and variations for all of these. So open up your brain and become learning sponges, because we're going to pour a lot of content into it. All right, thank you very much.